The Competition Tribunal has approved Takatso Aviation's proposed acquisition of a 51% stake in South African Airways, but has given conditions including a moratorium on retrenchments as well as a sale of the stake held by minority shareholders. The approval follows a recommendation by the Competition Commission in May that the deal be approved with conditions. For more on this, let's speak now to Thulasizwe Simelane, Takatso Aviation Spokesperson. Thulasizwe, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. What does this approval now mean?
It's historical, Bongiwa, and thank you for this opportunity. It is historical in terms of the trajectory of the transaction, but also in terms of what it will all mean in the end for SAA's sustainability when SAA is backed by a committed equity partner and implementing a scoped out and well-researched and funded business plan that will set it on a path towards financial sustainability and move it away from a path of being a drain on the fiscus of the country, and also help SAA to contribute to this country's economy and all the goals of regional integration. So it really is a historical moment. It brings us close to completing the competition regulatory elements of this transaction. And I say close to completing because, as you rightly point out, there's still that element of fully implementing the divestiture of the minority shareholders. And then we can say that we've closed off on the competition regulatory mechanisms. And as far as that is concerned, engagements are ongoing between the shareholders on how to realize that.
And of course, that is, one of the big questions tonight as to how do you then begin to deal with it. But I suppose another one is an issue that yourselves, have also been alluding to as well when it comes to this issue. SAA has debt. This is a legacy debt. And I wonder then what happens now, because we do know that that is something that is still up in the air.
Well, it's not necessarily up in the air, the whole issue of the debt of SAA, simply because you will know by now that the commitments that government made for historical debts of SAA emanate from the business rescue processes that SAA was had to undergo due to its independently verifiable at the time status of being a business in distress, and the options were simply liquidate and everyone loses out, or take it into business rescue, rearrange the debts and how it will be paid. Government at that point stood surety and basically undertook to settle the debts of SAA. So that was even before this process around the strategic equity partner process even commenced. So that is not up in the air. And I say that because you'll remember that in February, in the budget speech, the Minister of Finance did provide that 1.1 billion rand towards settling that responsibility that government has in terms of the business rescue debts. But there's also further commitments that government will still need to make to settle their responsibility, and that is part of the what we call the conditions precedent that must be undertaken. We have our own. DPE has its own, and other stakeholders have their own that will take us across the finish line.
So it's one thing to talk about the commitments, but have they materialized? Is this an issue that has been put to finality, particularly when we're looking at the issue of debt? Because we've seen the commitments, but one wonders, has it been acted upon at a practical level?
It's not within our control as Takatso Bongiwa, to be quite honest, but we have no reason to doubt government's commitment to fulfilling responsibilities they undertook separate from this strategic equity partner agreement and this process that has led to where we are now. It's a commitment that we've seen no sign that government would want to renege on that. It's processes in government, really. At what point do they fully settle what they had committed to settle? That's separate from the conversations we are having now. For our part, our commitment to SAA that is of a financial nature is twofold. One, it is a commitment to an equity injection of 3 billion rand towards the operations of SAA. And from that equity injection, we are undertaking to ensure that SAA operates in a sustainable way that will yield, enough sustainability such that in future there will be distributions and dividends and the likes. And out of that, the second commitment from our part flows. This is the 3 billion rand, the second 3 billion rand, which is the preference share mechanism, which was agreed between the partners as consideration for the stake in SAA. So as far as those are concerned, those are the financial implications for us that we are undertaking, and we have to comply with the first 3 billion rand, the equity injection, before this transaction is implemented. There's simply no world in which we don't make this equity injection and still find ourselves implementing this transaction. It's a condition precedent.
And very briefly then, let's talk about this also, some of the other conditions that you were alluding to a little earlier on, that, there are still some conversations even on that front. There's also reports that are suggesting that part of these conditions is also around the issue of retrenchments and all of that. And looking at the financial sustainability of this particular entity and what has been happening over time, is that part of the conversations that are currently taking place?
Yeah, so the conversation and the condition around no retrenchments, no merger specific or merger related retrenchments at SAA for a period of 5 years from the date of implementation of the transaction, that is a condition that came from the Competition Commission recommendation regarding this transaction. The Competition Commission made that one of the conditions that they recommended to the tribunal. The tribunal has now concurred with that recommendation, and to be honest, we didn't oppose that condition. It's a condition we are going to live with as the majority shareholder at SAA. So no issue arises out of that. What I did notice from the tribunal's order that sort of is a bit of an addition of a bit more detail is a condition that says for the first 24 months after from the date of implementation of the transaction, the affected employees, they call them, these are the employees who were affected by retrenchments at SAA during that period of business rescue. Those employees, as and when vacancies arise at SAA and they match the skills that are required there, they should be prioritized. So that now is part of the conditions, and we really have no qualms about the employment conditions that are on the table now.
All right, as you say, you are inching closer towards finalization. Let's see then what the final product is going to look like when all is said and done. But thank you so much for your time. That was Takatso Aviation Spokesperson Thulasizwe Simelane.